Good morning, Assalamu alaikum, namaste. My name is Farah Ahamed and I'll be speaking very briefly on the subject of period poverty. Until recently, the topic of menstruation has been regarded as taboo, shrouded in secrecy and mythology. Historically, in some cultures, men have refused to acknowledge it in order to maintain a romantic image of women. In others, it is still linked with ritual impurity and lunar madness, while in certain hunter-gatherer and mountain communities, it is viewed as a sacred time for female solidarity associated with healing and psychic powers. While there have been steps taken around the world in some places to improve the situation, in others, especially those which are geographically remote, there has been no change, and in still others it has become more difficult than it had been traditionally. In India, for example, positive steps are evidenced by the success of Padman and the Oscar-winning documentary Period, End of Sentence, as well as recent government initiatives across the country to provide free sanitary pads and access to toilets. In contrast, in Pakistan, Padman was banned and menstruation is an out-of-bounds subject. But 30 years ago, the environment had been more open. While policymakers, academics, entrepreneurs, artists and writers have had a chance to express their ideas on the issue, many voices remain unheard and missing from the mainstream debate. So what is period poverty? Some global statistics may help to answer the question and set the context. Around the world, on any given day, 800 million women are menstruating, and 76% of them are too embarrassed to talk about it. More than half of these women, around 500 million, do not have access to clean water and hygienic toilet facilities or menstrual products. By menstrual products, I mean disposable pads, the Ruby cup, tampons, reusable pads, biodegradable pads, pants with pads, amongst others. In terms of health and sanitation, 50% of schools globally lack proper sanitation, making it difficult for female teachers and girls. In India, there is research to show that 170 girls share one toilet. As a result, girls and teachers miss up to 5 days of school and work a month, or 40 days of school a year. There are similar statistics for the workplace. In terms of laws and taxes, many countries still impose taxes on menstrual products. Kenya was the first to remove tampon tax in 2004. India recently removed it in 2018. In the UK, it still exists and will until 2022. In contrast, France and Scotland are both providing menstrual products free to their citizens, and Sweden is certifying organizations as period-friendly. According to UNICEF, only 50% of girls receive any menstrual hygiene education for their mothers. Most school curriculums focus only the biological aspects of menstruation and not the psychosocial. 25% of girls in a survey conducted in India said they did not associate menstruation with pregnancy, including the risks. Lack of education and access to appropriate menstrual hygiene support has far-reaching implications, including mental health consequences, which is hardly ever talked about. Additionally, boys are not included in the discussion, perpetuating the myths. What is the role of multinationals, NGOs, and the private sector? For instance, companies like Procter & Gamble, the makers of Always, have stepped in to fill the gap in menstrual education. However, there is inconsistency in quality and delivery, and it begs the question of whether an impersonal marketing representative from a profit-driven company should be talking to girls about their bodies. The environmental impact of disposable pads is staggering. A woman using menstrual products dumps on average 125 to 150 kilograms of sanitary waste material during her lifetime, which adds up to 200,000 tons of waste collecting in landfills per year. 10% of waste disposed through toilet flushing consists of tampons and pads. This is having a negative impact on the environment because sanitary pads contain a sheath of plastic which is not biodegradable. Femtech, or female technology, has been on the rise since 2014, spurred by more than $1 billion in funding. The research and consulting firm Frost & Sullivan predict that this sector will have a market potential of $50 billion by 2025. It is interesting to consider the implications of a woman's period being used as a diagnostic tool to warn of potential medical problems, as well as mine their personal data. Information and activism. Menstruala or menstrual art, inspired by menstruation or to provoke a conversation around it, has recently been trending as a popular art form in galleries, schools, and on Instagram. There are other ways that activism can be carried out, which I'll discuss later. And what of the marginalized voices? Underprivileged women living in remote, rural, geographical areas or even urban centers are being left out of this conversation. For instance, poor urban women or those in labor-intensive or menial occupations, for instance, road sweepers, and those from minority backgrounds have different challenges and their stories are not part of the mainstream debate. These girls and women are being left behind. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my background. I grew up in Kenya where I first became aware of period poverty about 15 years ago. I'm a lawyer with a background in development and human rights, and I worked for a decade in girl-child rights, including health and education in East Africa. Over the years, my interest in understanding the challenges of period poverty in different contexts and cultures widened. In my experience across many countries, I found that the problems relating to period poverty are both universal and context-specific. I show this in my book, which explores the menstrual challenges faced by people in South Asia. The book will be published next year by Pan Macmillan India. It will bring together a collection of essays, poems, short stories, images of menstrual art, photographs and drawings to include a range of different opinions and experiences. It showcases a range of voices addressing issues of menstruation which have not been written about before, as well as documents those which are more common. It includes a diversity of stories and images from academics, artists, writers, period poverty activists, menstrual hygiene management workers and entrepreneurs, but also the experiences of ordinary women not usually included in the discourse because of their background, occupation, caste, or socioeconomic class. My interest in period poverty is in seeing transformation both at grassroots level as well as within institutions. My work in the area of period poverty for the past decade in East Africa has been through an informal campaign founded with my sisters, Panties with Purpose. Together we have been raising awareness about menstrual hygiene and the challenges for girls, as well as providing access to menstrual products to women and children. This informal initiative has reached out to over 13,000 girls in over 100 locations, including schools, orphanages, and in prisons. And we have distributed over 50,000 pairs of underpants and pads. PWP has also helped to organize the first ever period poverty conference in Lahore at the Lungs Business School. This was groundbreaking because in Pakistan, the subject of menstruation is taboo. PWP also regularly facilitates panel discussions on period poverty at universities. We have also tested at grassroots level the viability of the Moon Cup, reusable pads amongst others, and we're continually exploring new ways of enhancing sustainability and lessening the environmental impact of pads. The challenges around period poverty could be categorized as follows to guide us through a coherent narrative: attitudes, access, affordability, art, activism. Apps, authentic, and approaches to sustainability and entrepreneurial initiatives. So I'd like to pose a few questions. First, there needs to be more awareness and discussion about how girls and women in remote geographical areas of the world manage when they have their periods. How much harder is it for them during the winter months when pipes are frozen, when there is no running water to wash rags and no sunshine to dry them? What do female road sweepers do when they need to use the toilet and there are no public facilities for them, and when the city is dominated by male shopkeepers? What is the story about the girl who traded sex for a few rupees to buy a packet of pads? What happens when offices and schools do not have proper toilets or disposal facilities? What is the impact on a girl's mental health when she has been period shamed? What is the menstrual experience of a transgender person transitioning? What about girls and women with disabilities? How do they cope? How does religion and culture still constrain women? What did women do during the days of partition? How do they cope now in refugee camps or when they are living in homeless shelters? What happens during natural disasters, during pandemics? How do women cope with their period? What are some examples of menstruala? What has been the response from viewers? What are the experiences of femtech entrepreneurs? And what does it mean for girls and women that their menstrual data is being mined by corporates and research agencies? These are necessary stories and debates which should act as springboards for change. The situation appears overwhelming, but there are several strategies which could help mitigate the situation, and I'd like to suggest a few here. The first focuses on access or affordability. Access and affordability. We need period-friendly schools, workplaces and homes which have clean toilets, disposal facilities, soap and clean running water, and where menstrual products are readily available. As many options as possible should be available to girls and women to choose from. The Moon Cup, reusable pad, regular pad, tampons and so on. No woman or girl should be using feathers, leaves, mud or rags. Period leave is even a step further in the direction of saying women and girls need to be supported during these few days and should not be penalized at work. Then attitudes. Talking about periods, whether at home, work or school, should be normalized. We need safe spaces where girls and women can challenge the myths, talk about their anxieties and fears around menstruation. We need to raise awareness about the mental health consequences if a girl is not able to talk about her body and how she feels during her period. We hear cases about when girls commit suicide after period shaming by peers or teachers. This is an impossible situation. We must help menstruation become a dignified experience for every person. It is a natural phenomenon and must be reclaimed as one. We need thoughtful approaches to sustainability and biodegradability. Most menstrual products contain plastic which is not biodegradable and leads to sanitary products collecting in landfills. Biodegradable, biocompostable solutions are needed, which for instance use papyrus, sisal, sugarcane or banana leaves. There is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to explore how sanitary pads can be made in a more environmentally friendly way. Inclusivity. We need to include people who are not part of the mainstream debate so that no one is left out. Those with disabilities, harvest workers, forest dwellers, road cleaners, transgender people, those who are in asylums, those who are homeless, those who are living in disaster zones of war, earthquakes, cyclones, those in refugee camps or prisons. When we hear about natural disasters, we immediately think of food and shelter, but we never think, how do those women cope when they get their period? They need to be included as part of the conversation. In terms of education, there are many strategies which can be used to raise awareness about menstruation. These include films, poetry, graffiti, drawings, painting, embroidery, songs and stories and comic books, just to mention a few. All of these can be utilized as prompts to start a discussion, promote activism and inform, and bring awareness to both boys and girls that periods are natural and healthy. Of course, including the subject of menstrual health as part of the reproductive health school curriculum, ensuring the subject is taught in an appropriate way as a normal, healthy part of life is critical. Advocacy policy. Governments need to pass rules and laws which are supportive and give dignity to menstruation. In India, the Menstrual Rights Bill was discussed in the Lok Sabha. Tampon tax and VAT on sanitary napkins must be abolished so that the prices of sanitary products is reduced. This has happened in Kenya. There should be no censorship on films, no advertising restrictions on marketing or education, or anything that stops menstruation becoming a part of everyday conversation. Let me end by saying that period poverty cuts across every aspect of human life, not just the biological, but also the social, cultural, and historical. It impacts the economic, the political, educational, religious, artistic, technological, and entrepreneurial. I believe every person male or female, has a part to play in alleviating period poverty, whether by engaging in dialogue or doing something more tangible. I hope my short brief will prompt further discussions. After all, because Eve too had periods, we are all here. Thank you very much for your patience in listening to me, and I wish you all a good day. Thank you.